There's a part of the Appalachian Mountains deep in the heart of Kentucky where the locals won't go after dark. Not because of bears. Not because of the cold. But because of something older. Something that watches. When I was in my mid-20s, I decided to hike a long stretch of the Appalachian Trail alone. I was chasing solitude, trying to escape a rough year, divorce, job loss, the usual spiral. I had read about the folklore, stories of skinwalkers, missing people, things mimicking voices in the woods. I dismissed it as local flavor until I reached a stretch just past Whitesburg, where the trail thins and the trees crowd closer together. It started with the feeling of being watched. At first, I chalked it up to nerves, but by the third day it was constant. Not just the sense of being followed, but of being mimicked. I would hum to myself while walking, and a second hum would echo seconds later, always slightly off tune. One night, I heard someone whistle just outside my tent, a long, slow note like a lullaby. I called out, thinking maybe another hiker had lost their way. Silence. Then a reply, a whistle again, identical but closer. I didn't sleep. I packed up and hiked in the dark, which was a mistake. The forest here doesn't behave right. Distances feel wrong. Trees seem to shift. And the whistling never stopped. It followed me for hours, always a few hundred feet behind, no matter how fast I walked. At one point I found myself on a path that wasn't marked on any map. That's when I saw it, a person standing still in the middle of the trail, not facing me but slightly turned like they were listening. I froze. Something about them was wrong. Their limbs too long, head slightly cocked at an impossible angle. They let out the same whistle, long, slow, and I realized it wasn't a greeting. It was a lure. I turned and ran, crashing through the trees, cutting my hands on bark and stone. Behind me, branches snapped. Something was giving chase, fast and heavy. I didn't stop until I saw a ranger station light in the distance, completely off trail, but salvation nonetheless. Inside was an old ranger, weathered and gray. He looked at me wide-eyed, and before I could speak he said, "Let me guess, you heard the whistling." I nodded, trying to catch my breath. He poured me water and said, "You're lucky. Most don't make it out once they answer it." According to him, the whistlers are ancient spirits or creatures no one knows. They mimic sound to lure you off trail. Once you respond, speak, whistle, hum, they know your rhythm, your pattern. And they don't stop until they've learned enough to replace you. They don't kill, he added. They take. And what they leave behind ain't human. I stayed in that cabin until sunrise. The whistling circled the station all night. Never close, never far. Just constant. The ranger never slept, just sat by the window with a rifle across his lap. I never went back to the Appalachian Trail after that. But sometimes, on sleepless nights, I swear I hear that same whistle outside my window. Long, slow, patient, and off-key. For a while I thought maybe it was just trauma, auditory hallucinations from stress. But then I met someone, a girl named Erin. She had hiked the trail the year before me and ended up in a different ranger station after being lost for 2 nights. When I mentioned the whistlers, she went pale. She had heard them too. But worse, she said she had seen herself in the woods. A duplicate. Same backpack, same clothes, standing still looking at her. She never approached it, just turned and ran. That was 2 years ago. Last month, she vanished from her apartment. No sign of a break-in, no note, nothing stolen. but her neighbors said they heard humming the night before. A low, off-key tune just outside the window. I tried to find that old Ranger again. Drove all the way back to that part of Kentucky. The ranger station was still there, but boarded up. Abandoned. Looked like it had been empty for years. But the strange thing is, there were footprints leading to the door. Fresh ones. Large, barefoot, space too wide for any normal stride. I left and didn't look back. I've moved 3 times since then. Changed my name online. Switched cities. But I keep hearing it. Always at night. Always just once. That whistle. Sometimes it's in the woods behind my new home. Sometimes in the stairwell of my building. Once it came from under my bed. I don't respond. I don't move. I don't breathe until it's gone. But it's learning. It waits longer. It mimics my breathing now. Last week, I woke up to the sound of myself calling out for help. Same voice. Same pitch. Begging. From the hallway. I didn't open the door. I watched it through the peephole. Nothing was there. But after a minute, I heard a whistle. Not from the hallway. From behind me. Inside the apartment. That's when I knew it had gotten in. I haven't slept since. I see glimpses of something in the mirror. A shape that moves when I don't. Its hands are like mine. Its eyes are nearly right. Nearly. It hums now, constantly, as if it's practicing. As if it's trying to fine-tune the last piece it needs. I don't know how long I have left before it gets it right. But when it does, it won't need to mimic me anymore. It will be me. And no one will know the difference. Not my family. Not my friends. Not even you. So if you ever find yourself on the Appalachian Trail and you hear a whistle in the dark, do not respond. Do not mimic it. And above all, never look for where it came from. Because once it hears you, it never stops. It follows. It learns. And eventually it replaces. They call it Black Hollow, a dead place tucked deep into the Appalachian Mountains, where even the wind refuses to go. Locals won't map it, won't speak of it directly, and if you ask too many questions, they just shake their heads and walk away. I was a freelance filmmaker doing a series on abandoned mining towns. Black Hollow was a whispered name I kept hearing in old records, connected to a settlement that vanished in 1913. 62 people gone without a trace. One blurred photo remains, taken by a traveling priest who claimed he found the town completely empty, food still warm on tables, no signs of violence. The woods had grown thick over that place like they were trying to cover it up. I hiked in alone one October afternoon, carrying my camera gear, journal, and a strange curiosity that felt more like obsession. The trail was difficult to find and didn't behave naturally. I'd walk for what felt like an hour and still find myself staring at the same twisted tree with claw marks in its bark. Birds didn't sing. Even the insects were silent. When I finally reached what was left of the town, I found stone outlines of buildings, a collapsed church, and rusted mining carts half swallowed by the ground. I set up camp beside a brick foundation. That night, I dreamed of people standing in a circle around me, faces blank, mouths agape, eyes bleeding down their cheeks. When I woke, my tent was covered in muddy handprints. Small, childlike, all upside down. My camera was moved, footage corrupted with static and glimpses of shapes standing in the woods. Tall, too tall. No faces. Just stretched skin and long twitching fingers. I heard something walking just beyond the tree line. No rustling, just footsteps as if it floated. I tried to leave, but the trail was gone, replaced by thick forest that shouldn't have grown overnight. My compass spun. GPS failed. For the next 2 days, I wandered in circles. I found the same church over and over, and each time I passed it, more of the stained glass had returned, not clean but smeared with black oily streaks. On the third night I saw it clearly. One of them. It stood no more than 20 feet away, not moving, its body pulsing like something breathing too fast. Its head turned slowly toward me with a sound like cracking wood. Its face was mine. My exact face, but slack, pale, stretched like wax melting. It smiled. Not with joy but with mockery. I screamed and ran, crashing through bramble and thorns, my legs torn open, breath ragged. I fell into a dried creek bed, and in it were bones, hundreds of them. Some still had clothes. Some still had fingers reaching upward. I slept in the mud that night, too scared to move. I heard voices whispering in tones I didn't recognize. Sometimes they were mine. Sometimes they sounded like my mother. They told me I belonged to them now. When I woke, my fingernails were gone as if peeled off. My boots were tied together and placed neatly beside me, laces knotted like a child would do. Something was playing with me. I tried climbing out of the hollow, grabbing roots and stone, but the slope never ended. No matter how high I climbed, I always came back down into the same dead space. I stopped eating. I stopped speaking. The shadows got closer. They didn't walk. They glided, arms swaying unnaturally, heads tilted like they were listening for breath. One night, I found an old mirror nailed to a tree. My reflection blinked when I didn't. It mouthed something I didn't say. Then it grinned with too many teeth. I smashed it, but the sound echoed for too long, as if the forest itself was laughing. I tried recording again, hoping to document what I saw. The footage showed only black frames, but the audio was filled with my own voice screaming words I never spoke. That's when I knew I was already being replaced. Not just haunted or hunted, but overwritten. My thoughts grew cloudy. I forgot my name for hours. I looked at my hands and couldn't remember if they were mine. I saw flickers of myself walking just ahead, always just disappearing around the corner. Then I found the well, covered in vines. Deeper than it should have been. I peered inside and saw my face smiling back. Not the face I wore now, but the one I had before I entered this place. It said thank you without moving its lips. I don't remember how I got out. I remember waking up 3 states away behind a gas station dumpster, barefoot and covered in dried mud, a strip of someone else's shirt in my hand. I haven't slept properly since. My reflection lags when I look in the mirror. I hear my voice whisper to me from places I'm not standing. Sometimes I find footprints in my hallway at night. Bare. Too large. Sometimes I find videos on my phone that I don't remember filming. Me walking through dark woods, humming. Smiling. One clip shows me standing outside my own house at night, just watching the bedroom window. No one believes me. The doctors call it stress psychosis. But I know I never came back from Black Hollow. I left my face there. I left my name. And something came back with mine. It walks quiet in the night. It smiles when no one is looking. And every day it gets better at pretending to be me. They call it Devil's Throat, a sunken gorge in the Appalachian Mountains so deep it swallows sound and light alike, a place where compasses spin and even maps disagree. I was sent there on assignment as a field geologist after a minor quake was reported, rare for that region. Locals wouldn't come within a mile of it. The only road ended in weeds and rusted metal gates torn open long ago. My first steps into the basin felt like falling underwater. The air was thick, humming faintly. Everything living was silent. No birds. No wind. I followed an old service trail, half-eaten by moss and roots, until it vanished near the edge of a massive sinkhole. That was the throat. Black as space and twice as silent, it pulsed in the dirt like it breathed. The rock face around it looked scorched, not burned but aged unnaturally, like it had been screaming for centuries. I set up camp a few yards away. That night, I dreamed of something crawling up from below, not climbing but pulling reality around it like curtains as if space had folds. I woke to find a small pile of teeth next to my sleeping bag. Human teeth, some still bloody. My camera was turned on, set to record, though I had powered it off. The footage showed me sleeping and a shadow bending over me that didn't match anything in the scene. It swayed in place for 6 minutes before flickering out. I should have left then, but something about the throat made me forget what fear was supposed to feel like. I stayed. I studied the rock. It was warm to the touch. It vibrated softly, like a cat purring through stone. At dusk, I heard a voice calling my name. Not an echo, not a hallucination, my full name in my mother's voice, coming from the pit. When I turned on my flashlight, I saw movement. Not something climbing, but hundreds of tiny white hands reaching out from the edges, writhing like maggots. I stumbled back and hit my head. When I came to, it was morning and the hands were gone, but deep grooves were scratched into the dirt all around me, as if something had tried to pull itself closer while I was unconscious. My tent was flattened. My equipment was stacked in a perfect spiral. There were no footprints. That afternoon, the sky turned the color of rust. I could no longer hear my own voice when I spoke. It was like the air had forgotten how sound worked. Shadows stretched in the wrong directions. I saw a deer stumble through the woods, eyes missing, mouth sewn shut with twine, still breathing. When it collapsed, I heard something else breathing from the trees. Not an animal, not a person. A rhythm I felt more than heard. That night, I tried to hike out, but the trail kept leading me back to the pit. No matter how many turns I took, no matter how far I ran, I always emerged at Devil's Throat. I screamed until my throat bled. Nothing echoed. Nothing replied. Then something knocked on a tree behind me, 3 slow taps, and my flashlight died. In the dark, I saw shapes that didn't move with the wind, figures with no eyes but wide open mouths, standing at angles that broke anatomy. They just stood there as if waiting. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. When dawn came, the sun refused to rise fully. Just a dull amber glow in the sky. I looked into the pit again and saw something at the bottom. Not a creature. A version of me. Same clothes. Same posture. But it smiled in a way I've never smiled and raised one finger to its lips. I fell backward, and in that instant I knew it wanted to climb out. I had woken it. I tried setting fire to the surrounding trees. The flames went out instantly. Smoke rolled backward, sucked toward the hole. The pit was feeding. I started losing time. I'd blink and find myself kneeling at the edge, mumbling gibberish. Once I awoke with my feet dangling into the pit. My recorder, which I had buried earlier in a panic, appeared beside me, playing static laced with my own voice, repeating the words it's learning me over and over. The forest around the pit changed by the hour. Trees bled sap that looked like ink. Stones rearranged themselves when I wasn't looking. At one point the sky blinked, literally closed and reopened like an eye. I stopped drinking water. It tasted like metal. My fingernails turned black. I saw shadows walking inside my own shadow. I tore my tent apart and burned everything I could, but nothing stayed burned. Not even my blood when I tried. On the 7th day I saw other people around the pit. They looked like me. Slightly off. Faces too still. Too symmetrical. They stood in a ring, whispering without mouths moving. My nose started bleeding when I looked too long. I lay on the dirt, body too weak to move, watching as something rose slowly from the center. It wasn't a creature. It was a shape. A rip in space that throbbed like a wound, and it pulsed in rhythm with my heart. It didn't touch me. It didn't speak. It just stared without eyes until I blinked and it was gone. I don't remember leaving. I remember waking up at home in my own bed, mud still on my feet, recorder in my pocket, and 10 human teeth scattered across my pillow. I live in a city now, far from any mountain, but I still hear it when I sleep. That vibration. That voice. Sometimes I wake up facing the wall, hands outstretched, reaching for something. My reflection doesn't always match me anymore. Sometimes it moves first. Sometimes it smiles when I don't. And just last night, my camera turned on by itself, recorded 30 minutes of me sleeping, and at the very end, it captured my face leaning in from the doorway watching myself dream.